Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hayley and I use this channel to document my transition into a more natural zero waste lifestyle, and then I make videos about the tips and tricks that I pick up on the way. So if that's helpful to you, please join me on this journey and click subscribe below. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the basal base temperature method, or BBT for short. I'm going to cover what it is, how it works, and what we can understand from our bodies from using this method to chart our cycles. So let's get straight to it. So firstly, what is it? So the basal base thermometer or temperature method is usually part of the fertility awareness method in order to evaluate your cycles and get to know your body more. Your cycles vary depending on your hormones and the rises and dips that you go through each cycle. So it's used to identify your ovulation period, and therefore you can either have sex if you're trying to get pregnant or avoid that time in order to use it as a contraceptive. Secondly, I'm going to cover what you need in order to use this method. It's really simple. All you actually really need is a thermometer. The ideal thermometer is a digital one, which has 2 decimal points because that is the most accurate. You also need somewhere to chart your cycles, so you can use a pad and do it freehand, or there are lots and lots of different apps that can help you do it as well. I personally have bought the Femometer thermometer and use the Femometer app as well. So this is what the thermometer looks like. It comes in this case which protects it from dust and everything, and then it's just a simple one. I'll turn it on and then it shows you decimal points. I usually use Clue to track my periods, and I've been using Clue for many years now, but their BBT charts aren't that great. So I was trying to figure out which app to use, and the thermometer I bought was a Femometer one, so I thought I'll just use that app and see how it goes, and it's actually been working quite well, so that's what I'm going to stick with. There are tons of different thermometers that you can buy. The one that I bought was just from Amazon and it was £9.99, so it was pretty standard price. You can get other ones for more. You can get really, really fancy ones that sync directly into your phone, so you don't need to chart yourself. It just does it automatically, but those are a bit more expensive. They're about £40–50 and could even go up to £100. I just wanted something cheap and easy to use, so £10 was fine for me, and it was one of the most recommended one on Amazon, so that's why I chose that one. The important thing you need to know about the thermometer is you should have a digital one with 2 decimal points, and really any other brand is absolutely fine for this use. Okay, so now we've got the thermometer. How do you actually use this and put it into practice to chart your cycles? So every single morning you need to take your temperature. This is before you take a sip of water, before you even sit up, before you scroll on your phone, before anything else. You must take your temperature, and you do that by putting the on button on the digital thermometer, place it underneath your tongue, and depending on what thermometer you have, you can leave it in for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. My thermometer that I have actually beeps for 10 consecutive beeps, and then it tells me that I'm done, and then I can just pop it out and read the results. I usually am half asleep when I do this, so I usually take a picture of it and then put it into my app later on in the day. And then once you had your temperature every single morning, then you just pop it into your app, and then that's it. And then after a few days or a month, then you can identify the patterns and understand your cycles more. There are some caveats in trying to use this method, and you have to be aware of them to make sure that you have the most accurate results. So firstly, you must have at least 4 hours of consecutive sleep before you wake up. That is because if you wake up or you roll around during the night and you don't have the best sleep, then when you wake up and take your temperature, it's actually going to be higher because of all the activity and that you're more awake. So it's not going to be your resting temperature. So in order to get a more accurate result, you should have at least 4 hours of sleep. You also need to take the temperature within the same time every single morning. Some people I know just put an alarm on for the time they want to take it every single day. I like to just see when I wake up, so I usually take it between the hours of 6:45 and 8 o'clock. Which is obviously not an hour, so it's not going to be the most accurate, but for me that works better, and it's still going to be accurate. It's not going to be the most accurate, so it's still going to work, and I'm still going to identify patterns, and it's still going to work for me. But they just say within an hour is the best for the best accuracy. Your temperature is also affected if you drink alcohol the night before, so your temperature is probably going to be a bit higher than usual. So either you can not do that temperature if you've drunk alcohol before, or just ignore it or put it as abnormal. On my app you can put it as abnormal so it doesn't even go into your calculation. Your temperature is also affected if you are sick or have a fever, obviously, or any of those things. They're not going to give you the most accurate readings. So lastly, how do you understand your chart and what does it tell us about our bodies? Once you've been doing it for a few months, you will probably get a good, nice pattern through your months. It definitely can change, and your bodies change all the time. So your ovulation date might change and your follicular phase might change, but it is usually quite steady and the trend is usually quite easy to read. So I'm going to pop up a picture of my first cycle when I was charting it last month. It's not the most ideal chart. If you actually Google the charts, the temperature is supposed to be lower during your period and your follicular phase, and then once ovulation occurs, some women have a dip before the ovulation and then it goes up. And in order to confirm ovulation, it must have 2 or 3 consecutive rises after ovulation, and then on your luteal phase, which is before your period, those temperatures should be generally higher than the temperatures at the beginning of your period. So that is one of the main things that you have to be cautious about if you are using this as a contraceptive, because it only confirms ovulation after the fact. It doesn't tell you when you're coming up to ovulation unless you have charted for a few cycles and you can see a pattern of what your body does before ovulation, or as I said before, some women have a dip before the ovulation, so that tells you that they're about to ovulate. So that is a main thing. You need to make sure that you do use barrier protection or some other form of contraceptive before you actually know your cycles in and out. Also, your cycles do change month to month, so don't assume if you've ovulated on day 14 on one cycle that you're going to ovulate on day 14 again, because it goes back and forth depending on lots of factors, on the weather, on your stress levels, on anything. So just bear that in mind before you think you're safe to have sex if you don't want to get pregnant. As I said before, the confirmation of ovulation is 2 to 3 consecutive rises after ovulation. And then if you are trying to get pregnant, obviously that's the best time to have sex. And then they say if you have 18 consecutive higher readings, then that confirms you're pregnant. Obviously, a pregnancy test and a missed period and all those other symptoms will come into play as well, but that is what they say is a high indicator of pregnancy. Whereas if you are not pregnant at the end of your luteal phase, sometimes on the day of your period, sometimes the days before, as you can see on my chart, I came down a couple of days before and it starts to go down ready for your period to start at lower temperatures. As you can see on my chart, I have 2 abnormal readings, and that is from the fact that I had the first COVID vaccine jab and I had a fever from side effects of that. So I wanted to put it in just to make sure I have the whole complete record of my temperatures, but I put it as abnormal, so it's not included in my calculations, but it's just really for me to know, and that's just to let you know that it wasn't wrong, it's just a random reading from my side effects. When I was charting for the first month, on this chart, you can see that there wasn't really that much of a discrepancy. It didn't really go higher or lower. The ovulation was confirmed because it was slightly higher, but I did think at the beginning of this cycle that it was going to be an ovulation cycle, which is when I didn't ovulate. I have spoken to a few other people who have recently come off the pill, as I have, and if you haven't seen my coming off the pill, I will link it at the top here. I've spoken to a few people and they have said that the 3rd cycle after their period started from coming off the pill has been one where they don't ovulate. So if you just come off the pill, it can take a year or even more for the body to completely regularize. So even though I've had a few cycles now on track and normal cycles, this cycle could have been one where I didn't ovulate. So my example of my chart is just to show that it doesn't necessarily have to be completely low and then higher. It varies up and down, but if you have a good app like mine, it will tell you whether you have ovulated or not, and it changes throughout your cycle for when it updates from each temperature that you give it. There are other things that we can learn from charting our cycles, and not just when to have sex or to avoid sex in order to get pregnant or use it as a contraceptive. We can also find out our stages of our phases. So on my chart, you can see that I had a 10-day luteal phase. 10 days and under is counted as abnormal, and that could be due to lots of different reasons, but it can affect my fertility, and if I did have trouble getting pregnant, then the doctors would probably look at that luteal phase and conclude that I have a low progesterone, and then maybe give me progesterone supplements. The normal luteal phase is actually between days 13 and 17. So mine's just under, and there's lots of different things that I can do to try to extend it. But if I didn't track my BBT, then I wouldn't know that my luteal phase was shorter than natural. Obviously I'm still coming off the pill, so my body is still regulating. So there is a high possibility that next cycle will have a longer luteal phase, because it does take several cycles to get it back on track. And I'm not trying to get pregnant at the moment, so it doesn't affect me as much, but it's nice to know these things so I can prepare myself for when and if I do want to get pregnant in the future. Like I said earlier, I thought this cycle was actually going to be one where I didn't ovulate, and if it was, it could be absolutely normal. But if I have a consistent cycles without ovulation, then that could be cause for alarm, and then it could make me go to the doctors to get some tests. Some cycles without ovulation is perfectly normal, but consistent ones does show a sign of other issues like PCSO or endometritis. So just tracking our cycles can just get us to know our body more, and then if we did want to get pregnant, or if there are any issues that we feel like we're having in our body, then we can identify them using this charting process. So I hope this video was useful, and that you now know how to use a basal-based thermometer to track your cycles, to identify your patterns and any issues or non-issues that you may have, in order to use it as a contraceptive or as a aid to get pregnant, or just to get to know your body even more. Leave me a like below if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.